Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by. This is Retro Fun Tech. Today I wanted to review PowKiddy's latest and honestly probably their best retro handheld to date, or at least for this year. This is the RGB30 and it's a little oddly shaped, but it actually turns out that it's the best handheld for a few of my favorite consoles. So let's check it out. Let's jump right into the tech specs. So here are the specs for the RGB30. This is a Linux handheld running the custom firmware GELOS, or GEL OS. The RGB30 can also run the custom firmware Arc OS. Let me know in the comments below if you would like to see a video on that. The screen is the big star here. It's a 4-inch OCA laminated screen with a full fit 1:1 aspect ratio, so it makes a perfect square. The screen resolution is 720 by 720. Now for the chip inside. It's an RK3566 with 1 gig of LPDDR4 RAM. Now this device can play some mid-tier consoles like N64, Dreamcast, Sega Saturn, and even PSP. However, it's not perfect and possibly not ideal due to the aspect ratio, but we will take a look at that later. Let's take a quick look at the device. Now, a couple of cool features that I personally like are the front-facing speakers. And I also enjoy that the start and select buttons are on the front. It makes navigating through the device way easier. Now, taking a look at the rest of the front, the D-pad is actually a good D-pad. It's pretty close to a normal classic D-pad with a rubber membrane connection. Along with the classic feel of the D-pad, the buttons are just as good. They could be a little bigger, but they do the trick. Above the speakers, we have the usual Nintendo Switch style joysticks that are pretty good for the arcade games. I don't mind that they don't stick out all the way because this is a device that is geared more towards classic retro games. And it also makes it pocketable. We do have L3 and R3 for the sticks as well. On the top, we have stacked shoulder buttons, which I'm not usually a fan of personally, but they work on this device. There's really no need to put flared shoulder buttons on this device because you will likely not be using them a whole lot. Next we have the volume buttons, which are a pleasant soft click, then a mini HDMI port, a reset button, and a power button. Nothing on the sides. On the bottom are 2 USB-C ports. The left one is the charging port. Then you have your 2 SD card slots that are separated with the headset jack. And the right USB-C port is the OTG port. Note about the charger. This device doesn't work with Type-C to Type-C cables. You will need to use a cable with Type-C to Type-A for it to charge correctly. Nothing on the back. I will say that this device is easy to open, but you will need to use a guitar pick or a spudger to pry open the back. Be sure to not yank the back cover off because there are a few cables connected to the back plate. Why am I bringing this up? Oh, just in case you have a goofy issue with the battery, like I did, along with other things that I will talk about later. I had to disconnect the battery cable for a few moments and then reconnect it. After that, the device was charging well and didn't randomly turn off when it was still displaying that the battery had a charge. There have been a few people having this issue, but it's not super widespread. Hopefully the GELOS team will address this in an upcoming software update. Back to the device features. Let's take a look at PowKiddy's website. So there's a few colors for this device: white, black, blue, green, purple, the whole rainbow. Also, with each device, you have the option of buying the base model, which comes with just the 16 gig SD card for the OS. Or you can add a game card, a couple different sizes, for an extra price. Now, I would recommend, like I have said in other videos, to save your money and get the base model. Then you can just buy a good SD card like a Samsung or SanDisk and put your ROMs on it. I would honestly even recommend replacing the operating system card and start from scratch with your own card, and you can install Jealous if you are tech savvy. It's not super hard. The reason is, well, let's have a brief story time. So if you follow my channel, I got this handheld a couple weeks ago right before Thanksgiving, and I was super excited to check it out. However, after trying to test it out for a few hours, I came to the conclusion that I was going to have to push back my review. The issues that I was having with the device out of the box were all over the place. I had audio issues, some weird popping and crackling when starting games, stuttering and lag when trying to start or play any games, and at one point the device would just stop the games and be frozen on a black screen of death. I had to hit the reset button to get the device to do anything, and sometimes that didn't even work. I wasn't sure if it was software or hardware related. And of course that would happen on a holiday weekend, so I had to take a pause on even trying to fix this. Like I mentioned before about the battery issue I had, I'm bringing this up because just in the weird case that anyone is watching this video that they've had any of these issues, I was able to fix my device. I first tried to flash Jealous on an SD card that I had, but for whatever reason it didn't work. I think this card might have had Batacera on it, and maybe there were some goofy partitions on it. So I just kind of started from scratch and had to order some new cards. Once I got those in, I was able to successfully flash Jealous on the SD card and use another as the ROMs card. Speaking of ROMs card, I bought my RGB30 with a games card. I know. It was only a few dollars more, so I figured why not, just for the sake of ease for my review alone. Well, that might have been the part of the issue with the device. Even though I tried multiple cards, including the game card from my PowKiddy X55, which is supposed to work because it's the same operating system, it didn't. Anyway, my point is, if you plan on getting this device, save yourself the extra money and get the base model without the games card. Then you can grab a card from Amazon or somewhere and use that. The SD cards that all of these companies use are just absolute garbage. I would highly recommend using your own cards from the beginning and start fresh because, well, they will likely fail. So, the moral of the story is, don't be like me and not take my own advice. I was just trying to save some time, but that ended up not being the case. I ended up having to push this review back way further. What is going on? What is happening right now? Pico 8 Splore tutorial. So, one of the consoles I was super excited to play on the RGB30 is Pico 8. I am a huge fan of this console, or fantasy console, and I love the whole idea and community behind it. If you aren't familiar with Pico 8, it is a fantasy console that lets anyone become a game developer and create these awesome retro-looking pixel games. Along with making games, you can play all these games, and there are thousands on the site that you can access. You can play Pico 8 on your PC, Mac, or Raspberry Pi, or your retro handheld. To access Pico 8 and the games, there is a one-time fee of $15, and it is absolutely well worth it. Then you will have access to the files that I'm going to show you, and you can throw Pico 8 on your RGB30. You can emulate the games, or carts as they are called, just like you would with other consoles. But let's actually put something called Splore on the RGB30 so that you have access to all the games on the site. Then you will have access to the whole Pico 8 console on your RGB30. Sounds pretty cool, right? Here's how we do it. So after you go to the Pico 8 website and purchase it, I will leave the link in the description below. Then navigate back to the main page. Click the download button at the top left. That will take you to the download page. Now here you can see that you can download Pico 8 on your PC or Mac, and that's a fun way to play the games. However, we're focusing on the retro game portion, so we need to download the Raspberry Pi version. So click to download the Raspberry Pi zip file. Once that downloads, extract the contents of the file and just keep that window open. Now we need the game card from your RGB30. Make sure that if you are using a new card for your ROMs or game card that you have put it in your device already, so that the device will populate the necessary folders on the card. So power off your device, remove the games card, and put it into your computer. Now in the games card window, you will see a Pico 8 folder. Open that and drag all the files from the extracted Raspberry Pi zip file into your Pico 8 folder on your games card. And that's it. Eject your card from your computer and put it back into your RGB30 and power on your device. Note, you will have to connect to Wi-Fi for this app to work. Now let's go to the Pico 8 section on the handheld, and ta-da! You will see Start Pico 8 Splore, or just Splore. Select that and it will bring you into the actual Pico 8 console. You'll hear this awesome little noise, and then you can browse all the carts, whether they are new, featured, or you can add them to your favorites list. Now, like I said before, you can individually add the carts to your device, but I don't recommend doing that. The emulation isn't great for Pico 8, and some carts won't work. One of my absolute favorite carts, called Super Disc Box, doesn't work on any handheld when I try to emulate it anymore. But when I use the native console, woohoo! There it is, in all its glory, and running beautifully. Check this game out, you will become quickly addicted. Also, you will notice that Pico 8 games are perfectly sized for this device. They are running at a 1:1 aspect ratio, which is exactly the size of the RGB30 screen. This makes the RGB30 the perfect Pico 8 retro handheld. I'll show off some of the better known Pico 8 games, like Celeste, which is a huge hit now on really every console. It started here on Pico 8. Also, there are some remixes of games, or demakes, like Low Night, Poom, which is supposed to be Doom, or the different versions of Tetris, Pico Tetris or Tet-Yis. So let me know in the comments below what some of your favorite Pico 8 games are, or even if by chance you have created a game. It's on my bucket list to actually sit down and create one of these games. If only there were more hours in the day. So along with Pico 8, another system that looks awesome on the RGB30 is Arcade. Final Burn Neo, MAME, and Final Burn Alpha, to name a few. All of these arcade games always seem to get the short end of the stick with retro handhelds. If you have a different retro handheld, you end up playing them in either Tate mode and weirdly play your handheld sideways, which works, but it's just weird and I hate doing that. Or you can just squint and play arcade games with gigantic black bars the size of Jupiter on either side of the game. Now, with the RGB30, the aspect ratio makes playing arcade classics on a retro handheld actually really enjoyable. The joysticks even work well when you are playing these games and add a nice touch to them instead of always having to use the D-pad. And the last but not least, we can't forget Game Boy and Game Boy Color. Again, it's like PowKiddy just knew the world needed a horizontal handheld that the screen perfectly fits the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. Usually when you play any of the Game Boy or Game Boy Color games on other retro handhelds, you will have some black bars somewhere. I mean, yes, you could stretch the aspect ratio, and then the retro handheld gods would magically take away your handheld forever, and then you will lose friends and never be able to play your retro games again. I'm kidding. That doesn't happen. Or does it? But you don't have to worry about that with this device. The 1x1 screen fits the Game Boy perfectly. So not to single out the few consoles that I featured, here's a quick glance at how some of the other systems look on this goofy screen. It's funny because the systems that usually never have black bars, or they are barely noticeable on other devices, are definitely having some thick bars on the top and the sides. It's kind of reversed from what you usually see on other retro handhelds. Now, like I said, you can play those mid-tier systems like N64, Dreamcast, Sega Saturn, and PSP. However, as you will see in the footage and what I mentioned earlier, you might not want to due to the lag at times. This chip isn't super powerful. It will be able to play some games on these systems, but not all. So just think about the tier 2 systems as a bonus. If you get some games to work, high five to you. But please don't buy this device to solely play those systems. You'll be disappointed. Also, another factor is the screen. Because the 1:1 aspect ratio, you can see gigantic black bars on the top and the bottom. Now you can do some cool things like set up bezels so you can hide the black bars, but it's just something that I really wanted to point out. So here I'm going to show Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins on PSP, and it's running terrible. You can hear audio stuttering, you can see it just lag, and finally I do get it to play. Take note of the system information up at the top. So there are a few last features that I wanted to show off. Remember that OTG port and the mini HDMI port that I showed earlier? Well, you can combine these and use the device like a mini console. You can plug in the mini HDMI into your TV or monitor and use the OTG port for a wired controller. This device also has Bluetooth, so if you don't want to plug in a controller, you can use one wirelessly. Those are some pretty cool features for a little device that costs $90. Personally, I don't see myself using that a lot, but it's neat that we have that option with this device. I mean, you could maybe take this on a trip and have a couple of Bluetooth controllers and then hook up the device to a screen in a car or on vacation at a cabin or a hotel room, and bam, instant console fun for everyone. Also, before I forget, I realized that when mentioning the battery earlier in this video, I didn't show how to open up the device. However, I have a link in the description below from my friend RetroBreeze, who does some pretty cool mods on his RGB30. So take a look at his video and you can see a whole teardown of the device. So my final thoughts on this device. The RGB30 actually surprised me. I didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did. I also didn't think that the screen side would make this so different, but it does. Now I will say that this device isn't for everyone, like I mentioned before. If you don't care to play many games from the consoles that I featured in this video, Game Boy and Game Boy Color, arcade games, Pico 8 games, any of those that would benefit from the 1:1 aspect ratio, then I would probably say wait for something else. Chances are the black bars will annoy you, or the fact that the middle tier systems tend to lag a little bit on here. But for the rest who love all the consoles I featured, I would definitely suggest getting this device. Every handheld that I have used or reviewed seems to have a sweet spot with certain consoles or games. But with that being said, it lacks in other areas. What I have come to understand is it's just the way this hobby goes. There's a different handheld for every different system or different use case. So what are your thoughts on the RGB30? Is this the handheld you've been waiting for? If so, what are you going to play on it? Let me know in the comments below. Also be sure to like, subscribe, and even share this video with someone who needs a little retro handheld fun in their life. Stay awesome, everyone, and go play some games.